Hello class. Today we're going to do a still life. So I have a workstation set up here. You're going to want to do this also. You can use natural light. If you have a lamp, I suggest utilizing your lamp for it. In a still life, you are drawing or painting objects that are set up in real life in front of you, not from a photograph. Real life objects, and you position them in a way that you would like to draw or paint. It's really nice. They hold nice and still for you, and you'll pick up a lot of details. So the things to do to get started, besides getting your board mounted and your workstation set up with the tools that you need, you also need to organize and think about and plan what you want your picture to look like. You can use fruit. There's a lot of jokes about artists painting fruit. I had a professor that used to say there's a whole universe in an apple, and he made us paint nothing but apples for an entire semester. But he was right. He was right. There's enough detail and things to learn just from the lighting on an apple. Fruit works great for this, but it doesn't have to be fruit. You can use other still objects also. If you collect bones for some reason, you might be an artist. You can also use objects like I've got an iron here. Figurines actually work pretty well for this sort of thing, but I think that fruit and veggies work awesome for this. So once you have your objects put together, the next thing you're going to want to do is kind of situate them. And it helps to have a light that you can move around, but it's not necessary. Like I said, if you set yourself near a window, I've got some window light coming in from this side, that's fine. You can use that also. But be aware that if you're using natural light coming in from a window, that light source is going to change over time. And since you're going to be spending quite a bit of time working at this workstation, you might want to keep track of what time of day that you're working in case it takes you several days to come back to it. Work at a similar time of day so that the lighting will be similar. Or you can use a lamp, or both. Okay. So I'm going to spend just a minute here and kind of set up my image the way that I want it to be. Typically when I work, I don't want too much light on it, but I want enough light that I can see a highlight and shadow very, very distinctly, very clearly. I have some plastic fruit and some real fruit, and I'll probably use a combination of both here. And when I set them up, it's not just random. I actually kind of want to look at how do the shadows fall? Do I like how the shadows fall? I can move my light around if I want. Technical difficulties. It's good if your objects overlap some so that some are behind some of the other objects. You don't want them all separate and spread out. You can do it just on a flat table, and sometimes that's nice because it can do a cast shadow, which is kind of cool. But often in a still life, people will use cloth or something along those lines because it adds some interest to the ground. Okay. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes kind of setting this up the way that I want it. Another thing to consider is you're not going to draw or paint everything in your field of view. Probably seen artists do this before, right? Or this. Kind of measuring out. If I only have this space to work with, I want to make a similar square or rectangle with my hands. So that's about what I'm working with, and then I'll just move it up and kind of frame where I expect my objects to go, just kind of like that. So I have a good idea. kind of like just the 3. That's kind of nice. That's quite nice, actually. No, it's just going to be the 3. I like just the 3. That means I'm actually going to zoom in my picture a little bit. Yeah, just about like that. And that measures up to this one. Yeah, I can envision that. So I want this object in there. Maybe I'll do that separate. I don't know. That would totally change the dynamic. Yeah, we're gonna leave that out for now. Okay. Once I know what my setup is gonna be like, yeah, I like that. I like how the shadow's falling on that. Once I know what my setup's going to be like, it's good to actually tape off where you're sitting and everything, because that plays a big role, and you might have to come back to this later. You should take a photograph of it so that you can come back to it and reset it up if you need to, but do not draw from your photograph. Draw from what you're seeing in front of you, and paint from what you're seeing in front of you. So the next step after you have your arrangement set up and the lighting the way that you want it is to start blocking things in, and you want to do that with a pencil. You're used to this. We've been doing this with all of our paintings. Okay? But the next thing that you're going to want to do is, keeping in mind where you want your framing to be, you're going to start to block in the objects just with estimations, with no detail to start. Okay? So I'm going to start working now. I'm going to bring this a little closer. Yeah, I think that'll work. Okay. Keep in mind that your perspective on the video is slightly different than mine, because my head is down here and your eyes are up there. So it might be a little bit different from where I'm at. I'm going to kind of do this to get an idea of the shapes that I'm looking at and where they are and where the overlaps are. And also the shape of my apron that I have here and how I want those to fall out on my paper. And I want them to be take up about that much space. Might need to crop it slightly. So from where I'm at, I want my lemon to be somewhere in here. Notice how I'm holding my pencil, how lightly I'm doing this to start. My apple is bigger than my lemon, but I don't know exactly perfectly yet. There's about this much space in between my lemon and my pepper there. The back of the pepper actually touches the apple. It comes up about halfway to the top of the apple. So let me kind of explain that process real quick. You see me doing this with my fingers, right? Basically, I'm measuring, see if I can line it up to the camera there. If that's that tall with my eye and I move my hand up, oh, this is hard to do in perspective for the camera. It's about the same height to the top of the apple. And so I'm constantly doing measurements like this to try to figure out how far apart things are. I close one eye when I'm doing this, and then I kind of double check over here. If it's a 1-to-1 ratio, for me, it is right now from where I'm sitting, meaning this is basically looks the same size as it would for me in real life. That's really convenient, so I can get my sizing right on stuff. Notice how lightly I'm drawing. You can probably hardly see this stuff. We don't really want the pencil marks to show later on. And I've got some of my apron in here too, so I want to kind of sketch in how that apron's going to go. And look at this. My apron actually ran off the bottom of the page there, because for my framing, the picture ends about right here. And on my framing, the picture ends about right here. So let the objects go right off the side of the page if they need to there. Just a little bit of a pocket right there. There's a fold in my blanket back here. Goes off the page again, that's fine. Off this side of the apple, there's a fold here. There's another fold right there. That's a little bit off. Drew it light so I can erase it if I need to. Okay. I'm going to refine those just a little bit now. How much detail you do in this section is up to you. Some artists will actually draw the whole thing in quite a bit of detail before they ever paint. I'm going to do somewhere in between. I'm going to put a little more detail in so I kind of know where things go, because it's much easier to undo stuff with the pencil as long as you've drawn lightly. But some painters will just go in and start painting. If you have oil, it's much easier to undo your mistakes than it is with watercolor. So I'm a little more cautious with planning in watercolor. Apple doesn't quite touch. Right now I'm actually penciling in where some shadowy areas are, and you'll see why in just a second here. Notice I had to change some things. Okay, that's not terribly bad. Okay, let me just show you kind of my blocked stage. Good. Here's section 1.